You do. You look wonderful. You look snazzy, snappy,
I had
sniffy.
like an IRL lunch meeting today, so
Mm.
I just got back from that.
So, ooh, you put earrings on.
I wear these ones all the time,
Do you?
but I only have like 3 pairs. I'm sure this is what everyone's tuned in for. I have 3 pairs of earrings that I rotate. Yeah, I'm pretty minimalist, to be honest.
I dig that. So tell me about this AI symposium first.
Yes. So that was very interesting. It was a local meetup at a university here. And what was cool was all the people, it's actually like a 4 week thing. It was for educators specifically at
Okay.
the university level.
All
So
right.
basically talking about like how is AI influencing your teaching? Are your students using it? What relationship can you have with them using it? Um, and I think it's funny, sometimes when we're in this world, we think that we're so ahead of everyone else. And they had ended up polling the audience. How many people here have used ChatGPT? And it
Yeah.
was just about
Everyone.
100%. It was everyone.
Mhm.
It was everyone. And then they asked how many people are using it daily. And I would say 20% of the room raised their hands at that point. But it was
Yeah.
all head of mathematics for a couple different universities around here. So it
Oh,
was
wow.
it was that level of AI. It wasn't like I'm a content creator like me, like us using it.
Yeah.
It was like literal math people that it was actually really interesting. They had come and talked to our table for a little while afterwards, and they were asking me, how are you using it every day? And I said, well, aside from just my own personal stuff, I was telling them a little bit about all is possible. I said, there's
Hmm.
I have a partner and I are working on a print on demand solution where we've incorporated API calls and things like that.
Yeah.
Um, and they were really interested. I was like, it comes up with the artist's name, comes up with the artist's work. And the
Is
one
it
guy
Christian?
understood that it came up with the artist, and the other one was like, "No, the artist already exists." I said, "No, no, no, the artist does not exist." And then he was like, "What?" So he's like, "And these are listed for sale." And I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "Wow!" Like, he was pretty surprised. But I mean, it's just interesting talking with especially math people. I mean, people that understand this on a level that I do not. Um, I mean, just how they see the world, and it's like watching them talk is just like watching their brain process so much data, and they just like output it and they can recall like everything. It's like, I don't know, mathematicians seem to train themselves as an algorithm from like a young age.
Yeah, I bet. That's probably true. That's probably true. What did you learn aside from everyone everyone apparently has dabbled. Few people are using this every day, but 20% of the room's not nothing. What else did you learn?
So the panel was 3 mathematics people, and then one literary linguistics, like literary teacher. And he was kind of the only one. I won't say he was opposed to AI or anything like that. He's very worried that the next generation is going to lose their ability to write and critically think. What happens to poetry from this point forward? And um, that was interesting. And I guess my answer to that, which I obviously did not speak at this event or anything, I was a listener, but what I kept thinking about was, we're going to have a relationship with ChatGPT.
I agree.
It's going to be learning about us while we're
Hmm.
learning about it. There was one educator, she raised her hand and she said, she was at the college level. And she said that when she lets her students use it, she encourages them to use AI, but she wants them to always use two, like if you can't just use chat gpt. So if you're going to create a paper, use it for your first draft, use bard and chat gpt, compare and contrast,
Yeah.
ask yourself, why did that data set produce this versus this
Um,
data set? And resoundingly all of them were much more focused on imparting people with, you have to look at the data sets and understand where any AI is pulling this information from before you can start judging what it's outputting. which
I
I
like
thought was
that.
smart too.
I really like that. I think that there's some wisdom in that. I was talking to somebody today, and they're generally opposed to what they're calling runaway AI, and the big reason was, which I agree that it's a concern, but their big reason was everyone losing jobs, and it's not recreating jobs. And my parallel that I went to was the horse and buggy. Should we have not done the horse and buggy just to preserve jobs, or not done the automobile, kept the horse and buggy for jobs? And they made an interesting counter, and that was, well, what the car did was brought the assembly line, and we immediately had other jobs replacing horse and buggy jobs. And I was like, well, that I think that we have the advantage of history to say that it felt that way, that there was immediate jobs, but how many people were displaced? And is because of jobs ever a reason to stop a technology? I think there's other crazier reasons we should like pump the brakes a little bit. Aussie says, my mom is a high school teacher, and the use of AI is extremely scary to her about her students. My brother retold this story actually recently that his sons both came home and from the orientation. Everyone's going back to school. My nephews. And he said neither of them received homework assignments because the teachers in their district are so distraught. They don't know how to assign homework that isn't run through ChatGPT. They don't have a way to test the homework and the comprehension. So there's in class work, but there's no homework because, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an educator, so I don't want to like pretend to. Yeah, yeah. So this is what a few people were, and this is what our literary, the guy at the symposium was saying. I mean, I think it's just a new way of everybody relating to essentially just information. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, it makes me think like when Google came out, were librarians like, oh my gosh, we're not going to have to show anyone how to find books anymore. They're just going to go to Google and find them. And now, I mean, I think I think ChatGPT specifically is sort of replacing the search engine because it
Oh, definitely.
essentially scans everything. And I think that was something I learned yesterday too. I can't remember. Do you know what that thing that was called, the crawl? Hold on.
Is it a plugin in ChatGPT?
It was like the guy who actually left Google was like, it's not fair. Common Crawl, was that what it was called? Yeah, Common Crawl. So Google has been basically had this data training set and they were hoarding it. And so I think this guy left and that's what he actually started drawing on for these data sets.
Mm.
Um, but I mean, I think it's one, if I had a student that I even had the inclination or the assumption that they used AI to generate their paper, what's to stop me as a teacher from saying, okay, can you come up in front of the class and just, defend your thesis? Why did you write that?
Interesting.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
and to me, even when I had ChatGPT write a blog post for me, I was surprised at if you engineer the prompts correctly and in
Mm-hmm.
your voice,
Mm-hmm.
it will write almost in your voice. Like everybody
Yeah.
I showed that blog, they were like, this sounds like you wrote it. Like Jackie Roach wrote it. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think it's again, I think it's just more of a relationship and why do we is it like just in our blood that every generation is scared of the next generation
Yes, I
using
think
stuff
so.
quicker, faster, easier, and not the way they did it?
I think so. I think the biggest cause of Americans or people in the developed world messing with this, the biggest cause of their reaction is a technology that has nothing to do with AI. I think the technology is the internet, meaning this. When it came to any technology before the internet, there was always what we call the adoption curve that often happened in and among the developers who saw the future with that tech, and they vetted it, they tested it out. The general public didn't even know about it typically. I mean, we've been working on versions of the internet at the military level for decades
50s.
before, since the 50s. And so, especially with the nuclear program. And so, the public wasn't watching the sociological impacts on the critical thinking of people with the internet. But now everyone is an armchair quarterback of the innovation process. And this goes back to, I don't know if you saw this tweet where Jarrett and I were debating WorldCoin. I'm sure we'll get on this in our Twitter space briefly in a little bit. But this idea that everything is utopian until you try to manifest it in the real world. And
Yeah.
then it's dystopian. Oh,
Yeah.
Orwellian. Man, pick a technology that came out and read the headlines. Man can't travel faster than 40 miles an hour. So if man's going to be in a car faster than on a horse, their body's going to explode on impact. And it's like, I mean, I know people's bodies have exploded on impact because of fast cars, but it's not because the Model T. Like, come on now. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
there's these unknown worlds. And so I think my new thesis is that there is nothing new happening with this except the context.
Well, okay. Well, expand on that. What do you mean by context? Like our awareness of it happening?
Our awareness, the narratives that have already existed around this, synthetic media, forgive my Google Assistant, my other AI.
I don't have any of that in my house.
Yeah, good for, yeah, I bet you don't.
I don't.
Littlest
See, already
privacy.
turned off. There's none of
Littlest
that.
privacy. You're so cute that way. I think it's the context. I think, and not only that, it's the it's the sociologies of what's going on right now. Everyone, like someone was talking about an aspect of Americanism is we are what? Whatever you say. Whatever you say, I'm un. So we were un King George, and then we were un taxes, and then we were un pick a thing. And you'd appreciate this actually as a data nerd, but also in your faith journey. There was in the early 2000s, when I was still like looking at being a youth pastor, there was a research group in Christianity called the Barna Group, Barna. And they did a massive amount of research of the number of young people. An unprecedented number of young people are leaving the church. How much does it sound like today? But this is what they were saying because of the internet at the time. But they called out a certain trend and they published a book about it. And the book you might find interesting. I've got it on the shelf. I could send it to you or get you a copy. It's called Unchristian. And it was how the younger actual Christian generation, these people that I did identify that they believe in Christianity or the tenets of Christianity or followers of Christ, but everything else they said after that was unchristian. I'm not that. I'm not that. And it was this trend that they extrapolated to the greater marketplace of, man, it's like the un-cola with Pepsi, you know? There's this thing that goes on with us. And so now that sociology is so embedded now with influencers, hey, man, everyone's telling you to do this, don't do that, say yes to your dreams, life's too short. Or, like there's all this, like, all they're doing is setting up a straw man and bouncing off of it.
Yeah.
And so for me, I think the context matters because, yeah, there are uniquenesses to the content, in this case, AI. There are uniquenesses. But we just have the misfortune to have the microscope of the internet to observe every headline. These people were laid off.
Right.
Real time, you know, as opposed to the horse and buggy and the Model T. And by the time it got out that that the horse and buggy industry was dead, there was already automotive assembly lines set up, and then the assembly line reaching other industries.
Right.
And so there was this lag time. And so now people are saying, what? It's happening faster than ever before, you know? So for me, I'm just trying to settle into, small business owners, we do have to adjust. You're going to a symposium. It's very important. It's very important, but not because humanity's never seen a shift before.
So this just popped in my brain. So I got an email from my car insurance that was like, I almost thought it was a scam. I like even checked. I was like, is this really my car insurance? But it was like, hey, just so you know, New York State passed a law and your premium went up for it's to do with if your spouse driving your car. And it was like, if this doesn't apply to you, just log into your account, say you don't want this coverage, but we've automatically put everyone on this coverage. So I was like, you know, I'm like, is this real? And then like I still get a physical printed paper. And the headline was like, New York State passes this law. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is real, you know? And the law is that you can sue your spouse now if they were driving your car and they get in an accident or there's damages or whatever. And I'm like, and so like basically lawyers are loving this because this is like,
Yeah.
you know, another
Oh my
another case. And I
God.
was like, and then they can just refer you right to the divorce attorney and like take a little off the top there. But I don't even know what this has to do with anything. But I always
AI,
just
innovations, change.
I mean, we're just in a time. I read Emily Carrig. She's a Web3 influencer out there, and I've known Emily a while. We've oscillated in the same circles, and she kind of put this thing out today, just saying like morale is really low. And it was
Sure.
interesting. I was at this business lunch, and it was sunny. It was beautiful out, but even we were having this conversation of we were talking. They had been in an business meeting earlier, and I was like, oh, I was at the symposium last night. And I mean, I will say, I think the most dangerous thing on the business level is that this is opening up global economies. And I think everyone's a little worried about what life is going to look like in their country, depending on how this shakes out. And right now, like,
Are you
I
talking about
think
oppressive regimes using it? Is that what you're getting at?
no, I mean, I even think like in America, I think people are legitimately concerned that there's emerging markets taking to innovative technology because they have no maybe because they have no choice. But they're doing it, they're adopting it quicker than we are, right? And
Some are, yeah.
and I don't know. I mean, I think people are, you know, layoffs are happening. McDonald's doesn't. There's a McDonald's that open that doesn't have a worker in it at all. My bank in my neighborhood, there are no human beings. You walk in and you can virtually dial into an assistant and like talk to them face to face while you're working a computer. What the hell? Like I don't come here in person for
We call
this.
it remote banking. Yeah.
Yeah, like I just I can't, you know, I'm not trying to sound like the like old fuddy-duddy, but I mean, God, if we're not here on this planet to relate to one another,
Yeah.
I mean, that does freak me out a little bit. Like we're just gonna have more relationships with machines. There's more cell phones than people on the planet. I mean, it's weird.
Yeah. You know,
Am I
so
yelling? I feel like I'm screaming today.
no, no,
Temperature's a
you're
little warm.
yeah, I'm all fired up.
Yeah.
I don't know. I agree there are so you made this comment that really I'm concerned about. Not the thing you said, but the sentiment behind it, because I have been concerned about the same thing. There's a malaise today. There's definitely a dis-ease. And you know, before I'm a Web3 guy, before I'm a crypto guy, before I'm an entrepreneur, before I was even involved in ministry, my mission on the planet was personal development and helping other people through that.
Hmm.
And it's why we're kind of relaunching the training company. I want a really good spoonful of sugar to talk about personal development. So, you know, entrepreneur coaching and training is kind of what we're focused on.
For
And
people who don't know, Grant came up through Tony Robbins, so he was his buddy.
yeah, and we'll be starting our cult soon. So just pay attention. But like thinking about all is possible. And for me, what I love about that and just the words and is this since the pandemic hit, I've gotten a little lax and I've accepted a few narratives. One of them is, man, it's different out. There's a malaise out. There is the post COVID hangover, and everyone's not really sure how to interact with one another. And everyone had mask-itis, meaning we don't know how to talk to people, relate to people. And a lot of gurus, a lot of coaches, myself, we were waiting for something to change back to people not being so heavy. And it has been occurring to me over the last few weeks. Wait, the malaise is persisting because people like me aren't bringing back this positive message, this optimism. We haven't been ringing the bell that, hey, the observations are accurate. Jobs, we're going to lose jobs. Yeah, but how should you feel about that? I don't know. It's adding to this weight. Why is it adding to your weight? Well, I don't know. I mean, like, I feel bad for people. Okay. Are you threatened? Maybe. Okay. But like, haven't you lost a job before? Yeah. I mean, I got fired more times than I can count. I've been homeless twice. And we find a way or we don't find a way. And so I guess when I keep coming back to sociologically, it's all kind of the same between you and me and intelligent people. No, there's some differences. Exponential technology and this is a lot of new stuff. But what matters? And what matters to me, maybe I hope for other people, is that we need positive messages of hope. Not as a toxic positivity to smooth over the challenges we're facing, but because we will always face new challenges. And if we let ourselves get sucked into, especially as pseudo technologists or actual technologists, like we need to pay attention for our industry to stay relevant. But what I don't want to pay attention to it for is to add to my own sense of malaise. Does that make sense?
Do you live in a city? I just wonder. I don't know. Are you in like a like rural or like suburban or like
I
city?
mean, I'm
What
like,
would it be?
you know, Lakeland. I live in Lakeland, and I literally live like a quarter, 3/4 of a mile from the downtown. Like I'm in the city of
Okay.
Lakeland.
I mean,
Why? But what
Lakeland's pretty small, relative.
you're thinking like bigger cities like Buffalo
I
where
mean,
you're in feel heavier?
yeah. I mean, it feel like I mean, there's some days I drive around and I'm like, wow. And it's not, people think it's because of COVID that like the grocery store closes at midnight now, or other stores that used to be 24/7 are not. And so people feel it in these different ways, but like it's not. I mean, one, they literally can't get workers. There is nobody that wants to work minimum wage anymore. And there's more, especially in New York State, there's more government incentive to stay at home and not work. So we have that. And then secondly, like crime is up like crazy. Crime is up most places. And you're not going to read about it in the paper. You're not going to see it. But a lot of these stores are not going to stay open with, 80-year-old Linda at the cash register working the overnight when like people are looting and like stealing stuff and things like of that
Interesting.
nature. So I mean, I think there definitely is. And like what's weird about it now, and I've mostly been in this city for most of my life, a couple of years other places, but it's so strange that you're not reading about these things in the news. It's literally happening to your neighbors where like, oh, my car got broken in, my tools got stolen,
Mm-hmm.
this XYZ thing happened. And it's like, it's just all these little events that start to paint a picture. And I think what's unique about the situation that we're in now is that you're not seeing it in the news, but you know it's happening. And you're not
Mm.
reading about it from a narrative, yet you can see it with your eyeballs. And it was
You know what you're
pretty-
getting at. It's funny. So like in the morning at the gym, I'm having these super big workouts, but I still even end these big workouts with like 30 minutes on the treadmill. And they'll have like 45 screens up and I'm watching the headlines. And I'm not watching for the news. I'm watching for what is being called news.
right,
Like
right.
what is society calling news? And I have this sentiment that like I don't think journalists have a compass anymore. Not that I mean
Oh,
a moral compass as much as they don't seem like they know what is news. In Florida you hear shark bite in Rockaway Beach and it's like, okay, I mean that's a news headline. But what you're right about is like, I have a property in Cocoa, and there's been a lot of break ins around that area. And I have said there's a trend. And I wonder if we should sell the property because the neighborhood itself isn't going quite the direction we'd hope it would. Let's get out at an all time high. So I'm seeing trends. But you're right. Like, why wouldn't reporters talk on this? And I personally don't think it's social engineering. I literally think it's social ignorance. I
well, it's
think
because
that
journalists don't go out and journal anymore. They sit at their computer and wait for an email from someone else that tells them this thing happened. I
this
mean,
is the
I
news. Yeah.
watched this happen at the newspaper. Like we used to have city court reporters that went to court. They left
Yeah.
the building with their notepad or
Yeah.
their stylus, whatever, and they went to court. And then they came back and they were like, I was physically in the room. This is what happened. But now we have, I mean, journalism is just
It's secondhand
it's a
journalism,
cesspool of recycled information with
recycled
tinges of
information.
sensationalism along the way.
Well, and I think that's what it is. They're looking. It's almost like when I say their compass is lost, they're journalistic. It's not moral. I really don't think it's more. I think there's a moral problem societally, but I think that's a different issue because most people are ignorant of any sort of personal guidance, no philosophy, no theology, no guiding principles outside of themselves. So I think journalists view themselves as a form of influencer.
They
And
are.
well, they've become that because for chicken or the egg on how they ended up there. But what they're not is someone who's thinking critically what is good for the fourth estate and what is good for citizenry. There's not even a compass of what is a good citizen base so that we don't know what to report that citizen base should care about.
This is why I just want everything to be DAOs. And I have this vision for newspapers or for news in general where it just reports what's on the public blockchain. No middleman, no journalism telling you what this data means. You just get to see the data for yourself, talk with your neighbors about the data, and make decisions about the data. But I mean, I think it would be a much better world if there was, the I say this all the time on so many shows. If anyone's seen me a number of times, I'm sorry, but the purpose of journalism is to give people the information they need to make decisions about their lives, their communities, their societies, and their governments. Those four things specifically. It's to give the information, not to decide what's right or wrong to give them. It's just to give them the information. And you remember this. I mean, like if you see old newscasts of, from the 60s or the 70s, and my mom always says this. She's like, during Vietnam, we saw on television body bags coming home. Like
Yeah.
that was the information that was really happening.
Yeah.
Like we don't see that anymore. We see a very filtered version of information.
Well, and you're getting at like the major use of blockchain in media, and to me, that's attribution and verifiability.
Mhm.
And it would be interesting to see what sort of AI would have to exist to aggregate and synthesize with a language learning model what the data it's seeing and can verify. And there's Rachel and report on the blockchain. Yeah. And not about the blockchain, but the new standard is we only report that which is verifiable. And the only thing we know that which is verifiable is that thing that has an attribution on the blockchain that we can go to source. And therefore, but when I think about that, the only thing that disheartens me about that is knowing how much of a lift that algorithmic extraction of, okay, how many mentions, and by attribution, it's like, okay, you can attribute every single YouTube video that goes up. It just gets dumped onto the blockchain. It can get read. And then now we can say, listen, we've hit 71% or whatever the max new threshold is this is like virtually, this is near truth because the high attribution rate, the location geotagging, like we can say that this is like a legit piece of reporting real time. So this is happening near you. But to the technological lift of that, including the investment dollars and the economic incentives to do that, as opposed to just keep going with influence journalism, I would be concerned
Well,
that.
I would still be concerned. I'm sorry. Sorry.
No, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
No. You would be concerned that.
I'd just be concerned that we might never get to that ideal.
Well,
Is
we
all I'm
never
saying.
will because we'll never have clean data coming in anyways. I mean, like if that
Yeah.
were really the barometer, then the media agencies would just say like, well, we only throw into the algorithm like these verified YouTube channels or these,
Like who's feeding the data set
right.
is the next question. And this is my problem with supply chain is like, wait, we're still needing, I just met a supply chain I thought of you this morning in the locker room and it was for good reasons. And I was talking to a
It
guy
goes
who's
south quick.
in supply chain with Publix. And
Okay.
and they're setting up all their systems to go from basically farm to table tracking. And I said, that's great. And I said, are you using blockchain? He said, oh, no, it's barcode driven. And I said, well, So you're depending that the right person barcodes the right thing, scans the right thing. He's like, yeah. It's like, man, that's my problem with crypto right now. Is that we're still the Internet of Things isn't automated. We're still depending on inputs being quality from a human,
Right.
and I don't know. I don't know how long it's going to be before we get there. But this circles me back to my original statement. I think it's more imperative than ever before to break the message that the malaise is different, as if it was something new that cannot be overcome without good people connecting with one another, having uplifting conversations, seeing the world for what it really is, but determining that my agency will overcome in some way.
I am going to get real spicy here. And
Oh,
I'm going
God.
to
Oh,
say,
give it to me.
well, and I mean, we started this off talking about personal development. I mean,
Yeah,
honestly, I think people have been so uninvolved in the decision making process
sure.
of cultures, of governments, of anything.
Hmm.
I, I hope no one I used to work with watches this sometimes, but
As Rachel is messaging us directly, right?
yeah,
Oh,
no,
you
no,
mean you mean
she's.
back in
I
Buffalo? Got it.
currently work with her, so
Okay, yeah,
um, yeah, no, Rachel's amazing
yeah.
for
Okay.
blockchain solutions and supply chain. Um, no, but I mean, I had people that worked with me that every day I would just say like, if you want to go color in a corner today, I would rather you go do that than like you be on the floor just running your mouth
At the
and
newspaper or at other places you go. Jesus.
no, like just I mean, I'm just saying like there's times that I just want people to be honest with themselves. If you don't want
Yeah.
to be involved in the decision making process,
Ah,
then just go off and live in blissful ignorance, and like all the people that are making decisions will let you know like how it's panning out as we go along. But I think this malaise you're speaking to is that so many people are caught in like, I know what's going on, whether everything, whether it's, being caught up in conspiracy theories to being caught up in the mainstream media's version of things, like the whole spectrum. It's like for any of us to think we have like a grasp on like,
anything.
moving into a new industrial revolution and, the geopolitical economics of what's happening right now. It's just, I don't
Mm.
know. Like, I think that malaise can be cured a little bit by a big dose of humility, perhaps, and just saying that, like, wow, this conversation actually doesn't involve me.
Well, I
Um,
guess when I say personal development too, to your point, to back your point, I agree with what you're saying, and maybe personal development is too broad of an umbrella for what I'm talking about because you're mentioning humility, and it does take a lot of humility to do this thing, this abstract thing I'm calling personal development. I guess what I mean is character development, and in turning to someone and saying, "Hey, listen, I hear you back there, but like we don't need any more complaining." So you like being at the restaurant and overhearing people who are down in the mouth and talking down to other people. You ever overhear a table and think, they're really giving that server a hard time. And it's getting to the point where you feel the need to say something, right? You ever hear that? And maybe this is a guy thing, I don't know, but like I often feel this way. And I'm like, hey, you don't need to treat them that way. I want to do that in public. Hey, we don't need to talk about this opinion as if it's fact. Could you help society a little bit and just clarify that you have an opinion, not a fact? Could you clarify that that's secondhand knowledge and you don't even know where you heard the source. You can't even remember which of the feeds you were looking at
yeah.
when
Yep.
you were zombie skimming
Yep.
to get that. And so I just want to I want to raise the intellectual bar of like, hey, how can you prove that? Can you bring up that article for me? I'd love to see it.
Yeah.
Or are you
I
just saying things, you know?
I'm at the point now where if I really don't know about something, I am not going to pretend I will just come right out and say like, I don't know enough about that subject to have a comment or an opinion,
Yeah.
and I actually don't care. So I'm not even going to go home and research this more, like talk amongst
Yeah.
yourselves. I'm going to go grab a drink or do something else right now. But
Well, a question that's been coming to my mind lately that's a little less spicy, but not as much. And that is, hey, what's the value of you sharing that?
right. Yeah. Oh no.
I don't know. Well, and it's like, yeah, I mean, it's like when people catch themselves. I don't like to talk about people, but Stacy, and it's like, wait, Like,
Yeah.
what's the value of sharing this to me about Stacey? Like, why do you want me to know this? And
Right.
it's the
Right.
same thing with these headlines. It's the same thing with unvetted data, unvetted headlines, and maybe it's real time. Maybe it's the real time news, not just Fox. I mean, the internet. Like, it hasn't even had time to fact check.
I mean, we're selling products that are completely made up. I mean, I just want to put this in focus here. Everybody tuning in, like, yes, this is live to a lot of different channels, but this is Grant and I are in a business that is using AI tools to create products and sell them. And we have an automated workflow that is creating an artist's name, creating artist images, listing them for sale.
What a good call out.
Well, I mean,
It's a
because
great call out.
it's not, but it's not so much of a call out as much of a, I didn't know we were going to end up doing this. Like when we started this print on demand
Sure.
thing, I didn't know we were going to get to a point where, this is how it happens. So this is a story, everyone. Grant's like, we've made some great headway in our workflow. And I was like, do tell. And he was like, well, I trained the AI to make up a name and it made up an artist's bio and a description for their made up art. And I was like, oh, so everything we're selling is fake. And I felt very weird about it. Like I think we went through a week of like, what are we gonna do? Because Jacki feels really strange about this, but we are achieving the objective
Yeah.
we set out to do. So I had to sit for a while and think, is it ethical for me to promote these completely made up goods? And then I thought, finally, at the very end of it, I thought, okay, as long as we build in the open, which is what BITO means, this show,
Yep.
then we are providing value back to people about
Yep.
the inside of what we're doing, which is why I'm being transparent right now. And beyond that, if somebody wants to buy this artwork for on their canvas or for their laptop
Yeah.
or for their, I mean, whatever, there are two human beings behind it that actually did, set this stuff up to do it. So whatever. But I mean, it's crazy. If we can do this with print on demand art, then man, why couldn't we could automate a newspaper right now. I mean, we could put 5 sections together. We could tell AI, these are the parameters. You live in this zip code. The police are like this. The people are like this. Go
Well,
wild.
and I am testing some of this. We have a product, and I do need to go soon for a 4
Yes,
p.m.
yes.
I do have a product at the website company that's content for a year. We generate and we tell them this is made with ChatGPT. I could do it manually, and it costs this. ChatGPT does it, and it could do this. But then it dawned on me with some of the work we've been doing with All Is Possible is I could have it create a new blog post every day forever,
Yeah.
for life. So it's content forever. And there's a price tag to that, but we're automating it and we're working through the variety of prompt testing to really dial it in. But to your point, like if I do that, then what you're saying is completely possible. And so I had a friend who just labeled this entire concern, especially around journalism, as synthetic media.
Hmm.
And the idea of synthetic media as an existential crisis to the human species. And I pushed back on this a long time. I would say it is existential. I don't think it's a crisis more than it was before. I think it's compressing it into a very tight timeline and shoving it in our faces. And we're having millions of these conversations where we're going, okay, how do we do this made by human? But you do make a good point to the point of BITO is that we probably then should look at our workflow and maybe say made in partnership with AI or something. We should find an integrated, an intellectually honest way.
I feel like I mean, I've thought about this a while since we had our premiere show. So we stream on Mondays, and that only goes to Twitch. So that's not a which anyone can tune into. It's just we just chose to do it that way. But
Yeah.
that day we were having a pretty serious conversation about the messaging of the website, the messaging of the artists, what ties all these AI artists together. And Jacki's solution finally became like, I'm just going to have my corral of artists and you're going to have your corral of artists. And that way I like, and I actually think like as a creator and as a creative person and as someone who's like made a lot of avatars as a teenager, like I loved making avatars. And even like the video game culture, like we love picking characters out and picking out their car and their clothes and all that kind of stuff. It excites me to build these virtual artists.
Yeah.
I just don't like the way our workflow currently is, that every piece of art has a new artist with a new name. I'd rather see it curated, still
Yeah.
using AI, and like the art can still be unlimited, but I'd like to see like 5 of them
Yeah.
that are
Yeah.
developing personalities and things as they go along with their art.
I like it. I like
Yeah.
it. What was the one character? And then I really have to go. What was the one character you came up with? London?
Logan, yeah.
Logan Forrest.
Logan Forrest. Yeah.
Wasn't it Logan
He was an
Forrest?
American painter. Yeah, yours were all like these like highly cultured whatever names, and I was like, here's Leah Shelley.
All right, everybody. That's this very brief, the briefest episode we've ever had.
Yeah.
41 minutes is short for us. So we love each other and we love you too. I do have to hard stop. We'll have more updates on this experiment, all is possible, and Jackie and I building you open. Check us out at wellness.com or just come and check us out next Monday at 3:15.